The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, is one of the most iconic horror films of all time. The book, by the same name, written by Stephen King, was inspired by his stay here, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. One of the most famous haunted hotels in the world. What if you went to the Stanley Hotel and watched The Shining there? Would it make the experience of the movie any different? And what would it be like to stay at one of the most haunted hotels in the world? My girlfriend was super excited for this, and I was excited to shoot a video. So we booked a room for December 31st, thinking ringing in the new year at the Stanley could be an enjoyable time. And then the next morning, I set up my cameras and sat down to watch The Shining in our hotel room.
I'm pretty excited for this. The Shining is one of my favorite horror movies, and I've seen it a lot of times, but never at the location it's based on. Not the location it was shot at, though. It wasn't shot here. That's like I haven't even really watched this like in close proximity with being at the Stanley, but it's so obvious that it's not the Stanley.
As I just mentioned, it was just so obvious that this was not filmed at the Stanley Hotel. I was always under the impression that it looked a lot like the Stanley Hotel and they just filmed it at a different hotel, but it is just so obvious that it's a totally different hotel than the Stanley. Pretty much the only similarities between these two hotels is that it's a really old hotel in the mountains and that they have like spiral staircases. Otherwise, it looks nothing like the Stanley. Aside from that though, it was actually a really fun experience to watch this movie in the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write the entire story.
I don't really have much to say. 237? I thought it was 217. I didn't notice he's like off center in this shot. I don't know if that's on purpose.
As I said at the beginning of this video, we stayed at the Stanley Hotel over New Year's into 2024. And while we weren't staying anywhere near the room that Stephen King stayed in fact not even the same floor, we were staying on the 4th floor, which we were told was the most haunted floor. Which for me, definitely somebody that believes in spirits and everything like that, gave me a lot of anxiety right off the bat. However, over our entire stay, nothing really happened, but a few things were a little off. The main thing that happened is that it kept feeling like we were so certain we set things down on the bed or the dresser or somewhere in the room, and it would just miraculously end up on the floor. Moments later, or sometimes we'd leave the room and come back and something that we were certain was not on the floor would be on the floor. The slightly more intense thing that happened to us during our stay was I was flipping through channels trying to find one of the New Year's ball drops since it was approaching midnight. And as I'm scrolling down the guide, I find a channel I want to click on, and the moment I click on the channel, the entire power in our hotel room surges for a second, which is kind of interesting on its own, but when I tried to replicate exactly what I did, it was completely fine the second time. Unfortunately, I didn't catch any of this kind of stuff on camera, and in my actual footage of the hotel, nothing is weird with any of the audio or visuals. And extending from that, our actual stay at the Stanley was a pretty good time. We went and ate at one of the restaurants located at the hotel, and then headed to the hotel bar, where we saw some of the most interesting and sort of terrifying people watching we've ever seen. And then we headed back up to our room for the ball drop, watched the ball drop, and then proceeded to get probably the worst sleep we've both ever gotten. And as far as we're aware, it has nothing to do with ghosts or being haunted or anything. It was about 85 degrees in our room when we first checked into the hotel, so we opened the windows and thinking that it would cool down by the time we were ready to go to bed. But we were stark wrong. It was so warm, and we both like a cold room to sleep in. So we both got absolutely terrible sleep, and then I went straight into recording this video. And all of that absolutely played into my experience of watching the movie. I did this shoot at the end of our stay after having slept there and everything, so all of that energy and everything built up into me actually sitting down and watching the movie. And I think that definitely made the experience a little more anxiety-inducing, I would say, but it didn't necessarily make the movie any scarier, but it definitely enhanced the experience watching it, I would say. And while I really didn't have that much to say, unfortunately, while I was sitting watching the movie, I'm here today now to tell you that it was a really cool experience, and it's just still one of my favorite horror movies, and it was really cool to watch it in this kind of environment. That being said though, I don't know if we would do this again staying at the Stanley. I think visiting the Stanley is the better move just because of the experience of the room being so warm and the price of the room and the people that the hotel attracts just really wasn't our vibe.
I love this bar scene. Should I also write murder in red lipstick on the door?
Just don't.
Okay.
Lipstick's so hard to get on.
And although watching The Shining at the Stanley Hotel is probably not really that unique of an experience because I'm sure a lot of people that stay at the hotel watch the movie while they're there, it was a really cool experience and something that I think if you're a big fan of The Shining, a big fan of the movie or the book, it could be a really cool experience. And on that note, the Stanley actually has a tour dedicated around The Shining. We didn't do that tour this trip because a year ago, January 1st, 2023, we found ourselves in Estes Park, visited the Stanley Hotel, and went on the Shining tour. It starts like any other tour where they give a brief overview of the history of the hotel, but quickly dives into the history of Stephen King's stay at the Stanley and what parts of the hotel and what stories kind of transpired to inspire the writing of The Shining and then eventual making of The Shining film. And the coolest part of the tour is that we went out of the main hotel and into all of these different buildings. And they showed us what the family staying there over the winter to take care of the hotel might look like, just like the Torrances, what their living quarters might have looked like. And then upstairs in that same building, they actually recreated one of the rooms from the movie, even featuring that super iconic carpet from the movie, which was really cool. And then right off of that room, they actually recreated that super teal, super iconic bathroom. That was really cool to see as well. And then the tip of the iceberg was seeing one of the actual axes used in the making of the film. It was a really cool experience to go on that tour and then kind of come full circle a year later and watch the movie while staying at the hotel.
We're almost to it. Here we go. Just like that. The Shining.
Overall, this was a really cool experience and something that I would have never done had it not been for making this channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, a like down below would be awesome. It helps out the channel so much, as well as subscribing if you're new around here. We have tons more videos just like this coming so soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh my God, it's Jack! I think I'm funny sometimes.